The story begins with the narrator, mid-20s, observant, and quietly introspective, going about a mundane part of his day, such as walking home after work or tending to his small balcony garden. There is a comforting rhythm to his steps, the familiar sounds of the street, distant traffic, the low murmur of neighbors' conversations. His life is simple, ordinary, yet content in its predictability. Then, from across the street, he notices her. A woman in her early 40s, poised and effortlessly elegant, standing near her doorway, perhaps tending to flowers or adjusting a book on a balcony. There's something in the way she moves, a calm confidence that draws his gaze without demand. Her presence is magnetic but quiet, like a soft light spilling through a shaded window. Their eyes meet for the first time. The narrator feels a subtle jolt, not sudden or dramatic, but a gentle recognition that his day has shifted slightly off its usual course. Her eyes are warm, deep, and carrying an unspoken history, as if she's peering into him while recalling a memory he doesn't yet understand. Then she speaks, her voice light but deliberate. "You remind me of someone." The words hang in the air like a delicate question, stirring curiosity, a flutter of unease, and something unnameable in his chest. He freezes briefly, caught between instinct and etiquette. Should he cross the street? Wave? Smile awkwardly? His mind races, analyzing her tone, her expression, the way her fingers rest on the railing or the edge of her book. There's a softness in the curve of her lips, a subtle tilt of her head that suggests both amusement and wistfulness. Every detail becomes intensified. The way sunlight glances off her hair, highlighting strands of silver, the faint scent of perfume carried across the distance. A warm, floral trace that feels intimate without intrusion. In that moment, the narrator's internal world expands. Ordinary street noises fade. Even the smell of fresh rain on the asphalt or the muted hum of cars becomes secondary to her presence. He is acutely aware of the small, almost imperceptible tension between them, a recognition that something meaningful could grow here, yet it is suspended, fragile, and unformed. The part closes on his hesitation. He lingers in place for a heartbeat too long, imagining her smile lingering in his memory even after she turns away. The story establishes the magnetic pull between them, rooted not in overt attraction but in subtle observation, the unspoken weight of her words, and the quiet tension of potential connection. The audience senses that this fleeting encounter is far from accidental. It is the gentle beginning of an emotional journey that will unfold with nuance, depth, and warmth. A few days after the brief street encounter, the narrator finds himself in a familiar place, a cafe, a small bookstore, or a neighborhood park, going about his usual routine. He isn't expecting to see her again. Yet, as if drawn by some quiet gravity, she is there. She sits alone at a small table, perhaps with a notebook, a book, or a steaming cup of tea, her posture calm and composed, yet undeniably approachable. When their eyes meet again, there's a brief flicker of recognition in her gaze, like she's piecing together a memory and placing him within it. She smiles, soft, warm, with a hint of mystery, and in that instant, the narrator feels a rush of familiarity and curiosity. The air between them is charged with unspoken acknowledgement, yet remains polite and unforced. She gestures for him to come over, not with a demand but with a gentle openness, inviting him into this small, shared moment. Their conversation begins awkwardly, a mix of small talk and tentative curiosity. She may mention the previous encounter, teasing lightly about how he reminded her of someone. Or she may ask a casual question that draws him into a slightly deeper discussion. There's a rhythm to their dialogue, punctuated by small pauses where they study one another, her warm, attentive gaze, his self-conscious yet sincere observation. The first touch occurs almost accidentally. As she hands him a cup of coffee or reaches across the table to show him something, her fingers brush lightly against his hand. The contact is brief but charged. He feels a warmth spread through his palm, a quiet awareness of her proximity. It's neither bold nor intrusive, simply a natural, human connection that makes him acutely aware of her presence. Sensory details anchor the scene, the aroma of coffee mingling with the faint scent of her perfume, the gentle hum of conversation around them, the sun streaming softly through a window and highlighting her hair. His mind notices the little things, the way she tucks a stray strand of hair behind her ear, the faint laughter that reaches his ears like a soft melody, the subtle shifts in her posture that suggest comfort and curiosity. Emotionally, this encounter begins to awaken something new in him, a blend of fascination, admiration, and an unspoken longing he doesn't yet name. He notices how naturally she commands attention, not through force, but through calm, measured confidence and a quiet warmth. And though he questions the appropriateness of his feelings, a subtle pull draws him closer, compelling him to linger in her presence. The scene closes with him leaving the cafe or park, his mind replaying the encounter, noticing the lingering warmth of her hand against his, the softness of her voice, and the quiet intrigue of her gaze. The audience senses that this encounter, though brief, has deepened the emotional tension and set the stage for a slow-burning connection that will develop naturally, layered with curiosity, warmth, and subtle longing. After the initial encounters, the narrator finds himself drawn into her world in a more tangible way. Perhaps she suggests a casual walk in a quiet neighborhood, a stroll through a nearby park, or sitting together at a small, sunlit cafe patio. The invitation is effortless, unassuming, a simple desire to share space and time, nothing overtly romantic yet charged with possibility. As they spend these quiet moments together, their connection begins to reveal itself in small gestures and shared laughter. She shares stories from her life, glimpses of her past, subtle hints of vulnerability hidden beneath her confidence. He listens intently, aware that he is seeing her in layers she does not show the world. His admiration grows, not just for her beauty or poise, but for the way she carries herself, how her voice softens when she speaks of personal memories, and how her laughter resonates like a warm, familiar note. Physical closeness starts to manifest naturally, without any forced intimacy. She might tuck a stray strand of hair behind her ear, her fingers grazing his arm in the process. He feels a brief shiver, not from desire alone but from the quiet intensity of human touch. As they walk side by side, their shoulders occasionally brush, each touch is fleeting yet lingering in memory. The world around them, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children, the gentle hum of passing cars, seems to fade, leaving only the subtle rhythm of their interaction. The narrator becomes acutely aware of his own emotions, a mix of admiration, curiosity, and a hesitant longing. He notices how she moves, how her eyes light up when she laughs, the warmth of her hand when she gestures toward him, or the subtle tilt of her head as she listens intently. Every small movement feels charged with significance, yet nothing is rushed or forced. There's also an underlying tension, the awareness of the age gap, the societal perceptions that linger silently in the back of his mind. He wonders if these feelings are appropriate, if they could ever be understood outside the quiet intimacy of these moments. Yet, her presence feels safe, grounding, and invigorating all at once. The part closes with a moment of quiet reflection. Perhaps they pause on a park bench as the sun sets, sitting close enough that their knees almost touch, their conversation softening into comfortable silence. He feels the gentle steadiness of her presence, the warmth radiating from her, as she adjusts her scarf or shifts slightly closer. For a fleeting moment, time seems suspended. The audience senses the slow-burning tension, the subtle emotional pull, and the promise of deeper connection that is only beginning to take shape. After the lingering, playful encounters of the previous parts, the narrator and the woman find themselves in a quieter, more personal setting, perhaps her cozy apartment, a small library corner, or a tucked-away cafe with soft lighting. There's a shift from casual curiosity to genuine emotional engagement. The scene is intimate without being romantic in a physical sense yet, relying instead on shared presence, attentive listening, and micro-interactions. She begins to open up about her life in ways she hasn't shared with anyone else recently, stories of challenges faced, moments of loneliness, and small regrets that hint at past heartbreaks. Her voice carries subtle vulnerability, tempered by her natural poise. The narrator listens with full attention, sensing the weight behind her words. He feels honored by her trust, yet aware of the delicate balance of their growing connection. Physical gestures underscore the emotional intimacy. As she leans forward to emphasize a point or laughs softly at a memory, her shoulder brushes his. When she pauses in thought, he instinctively offers his hand across the table, or adjusts a loose strand of her hair that falls into her eyes. Each gesture is gentle, considered, and lingers just enough to leave an impression. The narrator notices the warmth in her presence, the subtle heat of her hand near his, the quiet steadiness in her posture, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the aroma of coffee or books around them. Silence becomes as important as speech. They sit together in quiet moments, words fading, sharing the unspoken comfort of being near one another. He observes the subtle changes in her expressions, the way her lips curve slightly when she's amused, how her eyes soften when she's reflecting on a memory, and the small, unconscious gestures that reveal her mood. These details heighten his awareness of her as a person, not just an object of curiosity or attraction. Internally, the narrator experiences a complex mix of admiration, protectiveness, and growing emotional attachment. He realizes that the connection goes beyond surface-level intrigue. He feels genuinely seen and, in turn, wants to be someone she can rely on. At the same time, there is a delicate tension. He wonders whether she sees him as someone more than a confidant, whether his youthful presence complements her experience, or if the age gap will inevitably color their bond. The scene closes on a quiet moment of shared laughter or a soft, lingering look. Perhaps she places a hand lightly on his arm, a reassuring and grounding gesture. The audience senses the depth of the bond forming, mutual trust, gentle admiration, and a slow-burning emotional intimacy that is far more compelling than overt romance. It is in these subtle touches, shared confessions, and attentive presence that the story's slow, deliberate emotional crescendo begins to take shape. The relationship has grown quietly, rich with laughter, shared stories, and subtle touches. Yet, the narrator is now acutely aware of the age difference and the potential social perception surrounding it. These thoughts ripple through his mind like a persistent undercurrent. He questions whether his feelings are appropriate, whether he might be misreading her warmth as something deeper, or whether society's judgment will interfere with what is unfolding between them. The tension is mirrored in her subtle awareness of his hesitancy. She notices the pauses in his speech, the way he looks down or away when a tender moment arises, the slight tightening of his posture when physical closeness edges too near. Rather than reacting with frustration, she approaches it with quiet grace, sometimes teasing gently to ease his self-consciousness, other times acknowledging it with honest words. She too feels hesitation, the awareness of their age difference, and the careful consideration of boundaries. Every interaction is imbued with heightened awareness. A hand that lingers too long on the table, an accidental shoulder brush while walking, or a gentle hug that ends just short of the heart all carry unspoken meaning. He notices how her warmth seems intentionally measured, enough to create intimacy, not enough to remove the necessary tension. The subtle push and pull becomes intoxicating. He longs to bridge the distance yet hesitates, sensing that rushing might destabilize the connection. Sensory and emotional details anchor this part of the story. Perhaps they meet in a quiet park at dusk, the sky painted with muted orange and purple tones, the air carrying the faint scent of nearby flowers or damp earth. Her presence is calming, yet her nearness sparks a quiet awareness in him, a flutter of anticipation paired with restraint. He observes her gestures closely, the way she brushes her hand against the railing while speaking, how her eyes search his for understanding, the gentle lift of her shoulders when she leans slightly toward him. These micro-expressions communicate more than words ever could. Internally, he grapples with his conflicting emotions, admiration versus doubt, longing versus propriety, desire versus caution. The audience sees him wrestling with what it means to care deeply for someone older, someone experienced, someone whose world feels at once familiar and just out of reach. Meanwhile, she mirrors a similar duality, revealing moments of vulnerability that hint at her own insecurities about closeness, connection, and societal expectations. The chapter closes with a near-miss moment, a hand almost resting on his arm but withdrawn, a hug that stops slightly short, or a gaze held just long enough to suggest unspoken feelings. The tension is palpable but unresolved, leaving the audience on edge. This part sets the stage for the story's emotional peak, emphasizing that love, especially slow-burn love, thrives in the delicate balance of hesitation, self-awareness, and subtle intimacy. After the lingering hesitation of the previous chapter, the story moves toward a delicate turning point. The narrator and the woman find themselves in a serene setting, a quiet evening on her balcony, a small cafe after closing hours, or a peaceful park bench bathed in soft, golden light. The atmosphere is intimate yet unhurried, allowing for meaningful interaction without pressure. The weight of unspoken feelings hangs between them, palpable but gentle. The conversation begins with light, familiar chatter but gradually drifts into deeper, more personal territory. She speaks candidly, acknowledging the connection that has been growing between them. Her words are careful yet sincere, revealing admiration, curiosity, and a subtle longing. She does not rush. She frames her feelings with warmth and respect, acknowledging both the age gap and the slow, careful path that brought them to this moment. The narrator, listening, feels a surge of relief and quiet joy. His own feelings are mirrored in her voice, creating a sense of mutual understanding. Physical gestures punctuate the emotional confessions. She may reach across, lightly drawing him closer by brushing his hand or linking arms as they sit side by side. The contact is tender but brief, lingering just enough to convey reassurance and emotional presence. When she leans closer to share a thought, her shoulder grazes his, sending a gentle warmth through him. He notices the subtle steady beat of her pulse through her wrist, the soft heat of her hand against his own, and the calming weight of her presence beside him. Their eyes meet in quiet, unspoken acknowledgement. He sees a flicker of vulnerability in her gaze, a rare openness that feels profoundly intimate. His own hesitation melts, replaced by a steady awareness of how deeply he cares, how much he trusts and values her. Words are exchanged sparingly. Often, a look, a smile, or a fleeting touch communicates what neither says aloud. Sensory details enhance the intimacy, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with evening air, the soft rustle of leaves, the warmth of a fading sun or the dim glow of streetlights, and the muted sounds of distant life continuing around them. These small, tangible details root the scene in reality while amplifying the emotional resonance. The chapter closes with a moment of gentle acknowledgement, perhaps a brief hug, a hand resting lightly on his arm, or her head tilting subtly toward his shoulder. Nothing is rushed or overt. The emphasis is on mutual recognition and comfort, a quiet affirmation that their connection is real and meaningful. The audience senses the release of tension, the deepening bond, and the promise of emotional closeness to come. The story reaches its gentle peak with the narrator and the woman fully aware of their bond. They meet in a familiar place, perhaps back across the street where their first encounter occurred, a quiet park they've walked together often, or her softly lit balcony. The setting reflects continuity and the growth of their connection. It is a space imbued with the memories of small moments and lingering gestures that have gradually drawn them together. This part emphasizes natural, slow-paced interactions. They talk softly, laughing lightly over small memories, but there is no need for grand declarations. Every glance, pause, and subtle touch speaks volumes. Their words carry warmth and reassurance, acknowledging that what they share is real, mutual, and cherished. The emotional tension that has threaded through the story resolves not in dramatic action, but in the quiet solidity of connection. Physical closeness is tender and intentional. They walk side by side, shoulders brushing, sometimes linking arms or lightly touching hands. Perhaps she gently guides him across a step, her fingers grazing his palm, or he instinctively adjusts her coat when a breeze stirs. Every gesture is rooted in care and attentiveness, emphasizing emotional intimacy rather than romance that requires explicit physicality. These small, human touches reflect the trust, comfort, and quiet desire that has grown naturally between them. Sensory detail amplifies the emotional impact. The sunlight, warm, golden, or fading into a soft evening glow, casts a gentle halo around her hair. The faint scent of her perfume mingles with the subtle smells of the street, flowers, damp earth, or warm asphalt. The distant hum of life in the neighborhood fades into the background, leaving the focus squarely on the shared rhythm of their footsteps and the gentle cadence of their conversation. Internally, the narrator reflects on the journey they've shared, from the fleeting curiosity of their first encounter to the hesitant tension of near misses, to the heartfelt acknowledgement of feelings. He feels awe at her calm confidence, gratitude for her openness, and a quiet joy that grows with every shared glance and laugh. She, in turn, reflects warmth and satisfaction, the ease of someone finally recognized and understood, the gentle pleasure of companionship that surpasses fleeting attraction. If multiple women are involved in the story, this moment shows them together naturally, each presence integrated with emotional realism. Their interactions remain respectful, tender, and cohesive, emphasizing the authenticity of relationships rather than forced drama. The scene closes with a symbolic gesture. Perhaps their hands brush and linger, or she rests her head lightly on his shoulder as they pause to watch the sunset. The narrator notices the rhythm of her breathing, the subtle heat radiating from her closeness, and the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat against his side. It is a moment of complete emotional fulfillment, warmth, trust, and connection distilled into one shared experience.